Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm Liza Lawrence. I'm glad to have you join me as we celebrate wonders and miracles together. All right. Well, I'm here today with Amanda Kloo from North Carolina, and I'm really excited to have her as a guest on my show. She has cerebral palsy, was born with cerebral palsy, and has lived a life of limitation, but not limitation as she's grown. But she's going to share with us some of the miracles and people in her life that have helped pull her along and helped her in her life. She is the director of inclusion recreation at the National Inclusion Project, which maybe you'll tell us more about that, but I know it works with children with disabilities and special needs. You've been a special education teacher for many years and have felt called and led through your own experience with disabilities to help and serve others. So I'm so excited to have you on and give us more of your background and tell us some of the things that you've experienced in your life.
Thank you so much. So excited and grateful to be here. I appreciate the opportunity and I'm excited to share my story with you and why it is that I do what I do. You mentioned the concept of God moments and living miracle, and that really embodies my life. My entire life is a God moment. So I am in my mid 40s, if I can share that.
Me too.
Yay! See, that's great. Now I can take a big, deep breath and feel like I have company in this stage of our life here.
Right.
So I was born at a time in our country where it is that access and inclusion and support for individuals with disabilities wasn't on the forefront of what it is that we offered to individuals during their life experience. I was born very premature. I was born 3.5 months premature and died during childbirth, and was blessed by that first God moment, that first angel on earth, as a NICU nurse revived me. And to the surprise of my family. So my parents were encouraged to go home because they were told, you were hardly pregnant anyway. Your daughter did not survive. Go home and have another baby.
Wow.
And the nurse felt differently, was truly committed to her calling and what it is that God had called her to do. So she revived me, and the hospital contacted my family and said, oops, she's alive. Do you want her? And my parents' reaction was, what? And they said, well, do you want her? She's going to have significant disabilities. She was deprived of oxygen for quite some time. Do you want her? And their answer was, yes, we'll be right there. And they were sort of thrown or thrust into what it is that this existence was going to be for a family of a child with special needs in a society where it is that that child was not embraced, where that child was not welcomed. It was really powerful from the very beginning to hear about and learn about my family's passion and my family's commitment and my family's love to carve out every and any opportunity for me to be able to move forward despite all of those hurdles and despite those roadblocks and limitations that were imposed on me, not because of me, but were imposed on me because of environment, opportunity, context, etc. So that was really the beginning of my path, literally, to the service and passion and commitment that I have for impacting the lives of children with disabilities in positive and meaningful ways.
That's amazing. Crazy beginning of your story. And I know you mentioned the love and support of your family. What were the things that really helped you thrive in your life and overcome some of these limitations that you were born with?
Well, my family, I think, are unique in that our abnormal was our normal. I never really felt within my family the strain or the fear of difference because we were simply family. And I had an older brother who was a year older than me and a younger brother who was a year younger than me. And I was just the sister. I wasn't the sister with cerebral palsy. I was just the sister. And if I wanted to play, I needed to play, or I was left behind. Or if I was struggling to connect, we had to be creative about the ways that I physically connected, and at that point was still very much struggling with speech and articulation and motor control. So ways to communicate so that I could be heard and I could say my piece amongst these rambunctious, energetic boys, and carve out a space for me where I simply belonged. And that sense of belonging and that sense of unconditional love and support is almost tangible in my family. Especially, I don't know if you have brothers, but brothers take care of their sisters. And so my brothers were charged with doing so even more vehemently and more passionately because I was different. And growing up in school, I went to a private parochial Catholic school as a child because I was not welcomed into the public school system. So this was before special education laws and accessibility laws and entitlement were in place for kids and children with disabilities and their families. And I was considered to be a fire hazard because I used canes and crutches and walkers and wheelchairs. Yet I was very intellectually gifted, but those intellectual gifts didn't come through to the teachers in the schools because they were trapped inside a body that wasn't typical. They were trapped inside a voice that couldn't be heard. So the school system sort of pushed me off to the side. And I come from a family of educators. I say that, teaching is not only what I do, but teaching is who I am. I come from multiple generations of teachers, my mother being one, and she found a local Catholic school. She told our story. She said, I'm a teacher. They said, well, come, you bring your daughter, we'll create a space for her and for your family, simply again, because we believe in belonging. My mother's passion for finding a school experience for me and creating that and advocating for me what was, I think, another key angel moment, the key God moment in that story. Because unlike parents of children with typical needs, parents who have children who have special needs have a different schedule to their day. Their day is full of all of the life and work things and family things that typical families experience, but it's also full of therapies and doctor's appointments and practice sessions and communication sessions and speech and IEP reviews and school plans and teacher meetings, and just the fear of what it is that happens with their child physically and emotionally and socially fills in all of those extra available pockets of time that can become really overwhelming. So for my parents and my family to simply naturally and gracefully take that on and create an environment where it is that my difference was celebrated is extraordinary to me. I think that is, again, God's work in action to create that space for me. My brothers used to carry me from class to class. The school that I went to was not accessible because at that point it didn't have to be. I could not get from classroom to classroom between classes easily. So they would take me from class to class. So they very literally shouldered my limitations and my difficulties themselves, which I'm eternally grateful for. Now, not to say that as siblings, we didn't have our issues. There would be times where it is that if we were fighting and we were in conflict, they would leave me places that carry me to the other corner of the school and sort of leave me there to fend on my own. And I would miss classes here and there. But our family unit, those were my people. I didn't have friendships and relationships that many other kids have because I was so intimately and so deeply connected to them. So again, surrounded by angels.
That's beautiful. And I love that family unity and maybe the birth order too, as far as sandwiched in between these brothers was necessary. And I think even for your development to have two brothers on both sides developing at different levels to show you kind of as a model.
Oh, absolutely. And it was really the lens of their typical development that even started the sort of questions and ponderings of my parents of, what's going on with it? When I was young, people called me Mandy instead of Amanda. So it was that question of what's going on with Mandy? If Josh is developing in this way and Damien is developing this way, she's on a very different path. What can we find out and what can we discover about that? And being open to learning and exploring, because they rejected the notion that I wouldn't be able to, because that was the notion that the medical team and the doctors laid out for them from the very beginning of your daughter will not blank, blank, blank. So they stepped back and took in what it is that they believed, well, our daughter may not do blank, 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 but what will she? Let's learn and watch and see what it is that she is doing to learn to navigate her world, then build on and celebrate that. So as a teacher and as a professor and as a professional, I tell all of the teachers and specialists that I work with, watch and learn from the child and see what it is that their abilities are and how it is that they choose to learn and how it is that they are propelling their development and what it is they are doing to interact and to communicate. Use that to inform what you know to do professionally, because it comes from them. God is putting those strengths in them. Honor that and value that and use that as your learning piece.
Yeah, that's powerful. Powerful for anyone involved in the life of someone with special needs to tune into that child's needs and their capabilities, because they'll figure it out in a different way. You know, I'm sure it wasn't easy growing up with cerebral palsy. What were some of the challenges you faced?
So I don't think that my challenges were necessarily any more or even different from what it is that the other kids experience. They were just mine. We all feel our own challenges a little more deeply than everyone else on the outside. But social relationships and friendships were tough. Children lash out at what it is that they don't understand because they don't know how to process their curiosity in healthy ways at times. And so I was bullied. I didn't fit in physically. It was very clear that I was different. I used leg braces and arm canes. And when I didn't, I certainly moved very differently than other children did. But I was desperate to fit in. And that may just be part of my personality, or it may be a natural part of what we know about child development. But I wanted that same connection and that same feeling of belonging that I had in my family in school. I wanted to be a part of something, and I most often was not. So it was really thanks to the angels that God put in my life, who very subtly created those opportunities for those friendships to develop and the opportunities for that belonging and for those connections to be made. First and foremost, my pediatric physical therapist growing up, she was an astronomically important person for me beyond the physical needs that I had as a child with disabilities. It was almost a psychologist, psychiatrist, physical therapist, teacher, friend, family member, all rolled into one. She helped me think about ways to minimize the impact of my disability and maximize my other talents and gifts. So she was great at giving me tips, tools, and strategies to be able to make it through the school day. So I say make it through because many children with disabilities and their families are just holding their breath to survive each day at school. So I was lucky enough, after I sort of found my space, that belonging space, to have what it is that I consider to be one good friend, one true friend. And this is a friend outside of my family group, which is very unique and very rare to kids who have difference. Because of that one good friend, I had a safety net to help me guide through that journey of survival. And that was key. I consider that friend, that therapist, and very specific teachers who I can identify the moments where it is that they open those doors to me as those angels in action, now those angels on earth, because all we need is that one person, and all we need to be for someone else is that one person, and it just changes the path of everything that comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a moment in your life that stands out, like a scene that you can share that was like, that was a pivotal healing moment or helpful moment for me?
Now I consider it to be a healing moment. So then probably not quite so healing, more traumatizing, I guess, than anything else. But distinctly remember when I was in third grade, we did a class play. It was a class play about dental hygiene, of all things. And I was cast by our teacher as the teacher in the play. Her name was Miss Tuttle. And so I was Miss Tuttle in this play. And I was just thrilled. I mean, I went all in with wigs and costumes, and I thought that this was my Broadway, debut. This little girl who speaks differently and moves differently gets this opportunity. And we watched a movie clip the week after, and it was the first time I had ever seen myself, and the first time I had ever heard myself, because again, all of our video and digital technology is very new. It wasn't common when it is that I was growing up. And it was the moment when it is that I realized I was disabled. I always knew that I had a disability. My family was very open. We had lots of discussions about cerebral palsy, what it was, what it wasn't, why it is that we were spending so much time in doctors and hospitals and surgeries, et cetera. But I had never seen or heard myself next to my typically developing peers. It was at that moment that I had sort of a deep breath and light bulb moment, recognizing, okay, this is big. You have a disability, which means you are abnormal. You are not like her. You are not like him. How are you going to use that? What does it mean to you to be able to take this difference and really make it something? Because God said to me in that moment of watching that screen, you're unique. Now take it out to the world. And it was then that I knew that I wanted to work in special education. It was then that I knew that I would go on to get a PhD. It was then that I knew that I would commit my life to creating places and spaces that were safe and comfortable and of belonging for kids like me, so that that moment of realization of you are different, you are not the norm, can be empowering and not disabling. So that really was the light bulb moment for me.
That's amazing at such a young age to have that level of awareness. I mean, I'm sure at the beginning it was probably shocking, like you said, a little bit traumatizing, but then to have the process of understanding that you will be called to greater things because of this. That's amazing, yeah. Truly.
Well, there was no ignoring it. There's no abandoning it, or to not recognize it, I think would fly in the face of the gift that God did give me. Trying to say that, I don't see disability or I don't believe that I'm disabled, I think it flies back in the face of this unique gift that I have been given. And so at that moment, again, to see that trauma of, no child wants to see themselves on camera, right? Especially a young girl at that age. But to realize, wow, so how do I take this? How do I make this into something that is good and that is great?
And what are the things that you've done? So you mentioned you've gotten your PhD, but you're also involved now in a lot of physical things, which I think is amazing.
Yes. So I went on through various schooling and various degree programs to become a teacher and to become a college professor for education and special education, and really maximize the intellectual gifts and the cognitive gifts that God has given me, because I don't need my physical body to be able to do and accomplish those things. So I've definitely been gifted and supported in that. But I found in that journey for academic excellence, because that was my comfort zone, I sort of abandoned and put on the back burner and sort of stepped away from all of the physical things, the physical skills that were not in my comfort zone. So I gained an extraordinary amount of weight. I didn't physically move around because it was hard. Not only hard because of my cerebral palsy, but hard because of my physical difficulty with carrying the weight, etc. And I found myself as a mother of young twin boys. I am lucky enough to have been blessed with the miracle of twin boys who were born prematurely. And I wasn't playing with them. I wasn't moving with them. I was watching everybody else do this because physical skill was not comfortable for me. And the boys came to me one day when they were toddlers. They were 3 years old, and they said, Mommy, why don't we go to the beach? And Mommy, first of all, she's like, oh, Mommy works a lot. Mommy teaches all the time. We don't go to the beach. And then Mommy looks down and she sees her leg braces, and she looks down and she sees her body. And in her mind, she knows that we don't go to the beach because I choose not to. I hide from the beach because it's physically difficult. It's emotionally difficult. That is not my place of belonging. That is not my safe place. And their response to all of these made up excuses of why we don't go to the beach was, well, so can we go tomorrow? Are we going to go to the beach? When are we going to go to the beach? Okay, that's fine for today. But are we going now? Is it next? Okay. And I realized I can't say no to that. It was like that video moment again, where it is that my difference, my disability was at the forefront of this movie camera that I was seeing in my life pass by. And all of these amazing things that I was committed to doing for kids with disabilities in schools and education and learning had completely ignored the fact that we as whole people, whole human beings, have academic needs, learning needs, spiritual needs, physical needs, social emotional needs. And I was only honoring some of those. So I committed to learning how, even in my context and environment with cerebral palsy and with weight problems and physical difficulties, to exercise and to become fit. I did what it is that I knew best. I got additional degrees and additional experience, and I learned about what it is that we know is part of adaptive sport and adaptive fitness and inclusive play and adaptive PE and all of the things that we can do to create exercise and health experiences and recreation experiences for kids so that they can embrace their whole person. I got really fit. I dropped all of that weight. I became an adaptive athlete. I became an adaptive fitness coach and moved away from sort of the classroom teaching experiences for kids to working on trying to maximize and create inclusive recreation experiences for kids. So all of that out of school time learning and that out of school time experience that completes their life experience and their joy and their hobbies and their friendships.
That's amazing. I love that. So what are some of the things you've accomplished through your fitness? Because I know that's become a passion of yours.
It has not only a personal passion and a hobby, but also a professional pursuit for me, which is crazy because I am that girl, I am that kid that was never interested in anything athletic. I was a sports supporter for my brothers and my peers and in school, but never had an individual passion simply because I didn't believe that I could. I didn't believe that I could engage in these things because the opportunities weren't inclusive or supportive of me doing so. So I have become very involved in the world of what we call adaptive fitness. So it's not sports specific. It isn't wheelchair basketball. It's not Special Olympics. Adaptive functional fitness is the use of exercise and fitness training to use what we do and we can achieve inside the gym to live a better, healthier life outside the gym. Part of my journey in adaptive fitness has been pursuing what is called adaptive CrossFit. And adaptive CrossFit is a foray into the world of the sport of CrossFit, which is combinations of Olympic weightlifting, aerobic capacity training, body weight fitness movements. Picture things like weights and burpees and pull-ups and gymnastic skills, etc. So all of those foundational primal exercise movements, but in competitive arenas. And so adaptive CrossFit offers opportunities for athletes with disabilities and lifelong conditions to engage in the sport of CrossFit in the same way that other athletes do. I've been lucky enough to both compete as well as coach at various national and international levels at competitions throughout the world that engage athletes with disabilities in these highly competitive, highly intense competitions of fitness.
That's amazing. Honestly, going from pure academics to competitive athletics. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and it's a great way for me to move and stay healthy as well, because you have to train intensely. You have to really have control over your nutrition, your physical environment, convince yourself to keep moving and keep playing and engage in things that would be easily to say, you know, I'm too tired to do that today, or I'm in too much pain to do that today. But knowing that if I stay physically healthy by doing these things, then all of the rest falls into place for me. Even just with the other symptoms of my disability, moving toward a healthier nutritional plan has decreased my pain, my nerve activity. I don't have as much nerve pain and spasticity. I'm getting better sleep. My neuropathy is better. Everything has evened out for me with really focusing in on, yes, the physical activity and exercise is one piece, but the nutrition is all of the other pieces that really fit into that picture.
Yeah. And I totally believe that. When it was about 10 years ago, my oldest son, we thought he was on the spectrum, and I was praying about him, and I heard very clearly change his diet. And so I went on a journey 10 years ago before it was popular and before there was a lot of information out there on clean eating. Mm-hmm. And we cleaned up our diets and saw all of those things improve. It was amazing. Hormone balance, his behavior completely calmed down and changed to the point where we're like, okay, I don't think he's on the spectrum anymore. Like mm-hmm. we saw amazing improvements through just cleaning up the diet. So we had clean sources of food, mm-hmm. getting the processed foods out, and saw massive improvements. So.
Absolutely. And that was really my first step and our first step as a family as well, because I needed their buy-in to be able to do what it is that I needed to do. I couldn't prep, a clean meal for me and then not for everyone else. But I've only become sort of stricter in my nutrition when it is that I need it to support my sport. We found that just by having a clean nutritional plan and commitment to cleaner eating, that vicariously, my husband's health has improved, my children's health has improved, the rest of my family has adopted some of the same habits and behaviors and sources that we have. And it's amazing to see what that impact is, because it also helps us to better identify when there are health issues, what that root cause might be, because we know that we're sort of factoring out a lot of the other things that may have been interfering in the first place.
Right. Yes. I think it's huge.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Have you seen any miracles and blessings come from working with children in that arena, or even that you've seen in yourself through that journey?
Oh, as a teacher, to touch on and to recognize and celebrate all of the little angels in action, the little angels on earth that have been put in my path, are to simply see the world through the eyes of the kids that I've taught. whether it was teaching, preschool and the experience that I had with them, to teaching, elementary schoolers up through my college age and graduate students, or even now working with coaches and recreation professionals. There is that reflection of true generosity and true hospitality, which I think is through the gift of teaching, because it's a way that God carves out an opportunity for us to share some of us, to share our time, our knowledge, our talents, but to get so much in return. And so there are specific moments that I can point to through my teaching career where it is that I know, God has been taking me on a different path, or at least a detour and different scenery in this journey. One in particular, I had been teaching in a kindergarten, and I always try to cover up my leg braces and my AFOs. One day my skirt was just getting in the way, so I tied the skirt up onto my hip on one side. And a little boy in my classroom who had spina bifida, who had used a wheelchair and also worn AFOs. He happened to be nonverbal because of some additional conditions and comorbid disabilities. And when he saw my leg braces, just went wild with giggles and joys and recognition, and was calling out the word same and me and family. And the recognition of him to me was one powerful moment, because we shared that, where it is that we saw similarity when everyone else saw difference. But it was the recognition of the rest of my class that he experienced that and that I experienced that, which was the truly powerful thing, because they all became curious and interested and embraced. They wanted to touch our braces and decorate his wheelchair, and had all kinds of questions. And one child asked if I was made of adamantium like Wolverine from X-Men. Another child asked if I could transform into something else, and wanted to know what our superpowers were. So it's those moments that I think, gosh, that's it right there. And even now, in working with adults and professionals who serve adults, to see them experience those moments as a teacher and as a professor, to see your students see that in their students, is such a fulfilling, a life-giving moment for you. So every time I interact with a learner of any age, to be able to see that recognition that difference is powerful, and that recognition that everyone belongs, if there is someone who's committed to creating that belonging space, is exceptional.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that little scene. I taught kindergarten as well. And I think that's my favorite age. They're so curious and so innocent in their wonderment about things, and how tender and sweet for that child with spina bifida to have that moment of same. And, a teacher is someone that has so much power in a child's life. And so that is really sweet. Such a beautiful moment. I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. And I think too, regardless of who it is that we are, what it is that our individual differences are, or challenges or hurdles, to know that there's someone out there like you, whether it be someone who looks like you, or moves like you, or feels like you, or speaks like you. It's an incredibly welcoming, affirming thing. And I don't care if that person is 20 years older or 20 years younger, or if they live 200 miles away or 2,000, knowing that you have a place and you have a person, so that you're not going it alone, is extraordinary. And for me, simply believing in, when all else fails, that God is that person.
Yes.
And that, even though I can convince myself that I'm going something alone, I'm a reflection of him, right? So that actually means that, wow, God has cerebral palsy. God is a 45 whatever year old woman who's experienced all of these things in life, who has cerebral palsy and knows my path. So if he's got it figured out, then I'm a reflection of that as well.
Yeah. I love that. Amen. So beautiful. Any pieces of advice you would give for all of us, really?
I would say, find that person and be that person. Because remember, it only takes one. It takes, one opportunity, one affirming nod, one moment of recognition that we can all start yelling out that joyful same me family moment. And especially in times like these, where it is that we feel so isolated, to understand that those are the miracles in action. Those are the moments that we can find those connections. So definitely focus in on being that and finding that one person, and go to those who know. There are extraordinary organizations. Mine, for example, National Inclusion Project, is full of experts that can equip schools and gyms and community centers and camps of how to create these inclusive moments, those inclusive belonging experiences for kids. But we don't go it alone either. We collaborate with and connect with other experts and organizations that are part of the shared learning and the shared discourse. And even more importantly, working with kids and families who live this experience. So to know that if whoever it is that you connect to, whether it be National Inclusion Project or the other, amazing disability advocacy organizations that have grown through our, decades of work in our country, if they don't know, they're connected to someone who does. So to know that there's a community of support out there, even when it is that you feel like you're isolated and taking this journey by yourself.
I love that. Thank you. So your story is actually in a book that's coming out in May called Pulling Each Other Along. I did an interview with Doug Cornfield and Dave Clark, who also are in this project. So I'm excited that your story is included and that we get to, when that comes out, read it and learn more. And I just think that you've got a powerful message, a powerful experience, and you really are an amazing example of living your calling and living your purpose through your experiences with disabilities. I think that's inspiring for other people.
Thank you. Very much appreciated and very humbled. I am not quite sure yet that I belong in the book or even having experiences like you've gifted to me today, because I just live the path and try to live the life that God has given me. And it's extraordinary if someone can benefit from that or even embrace that in any way to touch the lives of a child in an impactful way. So if folks can improve the lives of kids like me and the kids that we work with, then I'm all for it.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all that you do and that you are doing. And thank you out there to all of those angels that are being that person, because you changed my life. And I know that you're changing the lives of others. And it's an extraordinary thing. It's a gift that we're given to be able to do good works. And so let's just keep doing it.
Thank you so much for listening to this miracle story. Please subscribe to my channel if you like